Hi, hello again, here we are. I've got a good mate of mine, someone that sort of, when I first opened the bar, I started emailing back and forth. I don't know why, but something just sort of clicks. This is, right here, Peter Bignell from Belgrove Distillery in Tasmania, a little place called Kempton. And he's making Australia's first ever rye spirit. In a little while, he'll be able to release it as Australia's first ever rye whiskey. And it is officially the greenest spirit and greenest distillery on the planet. So, Peter, hello. Say hello to the people.
Hi Nick, hello people.
So, why distilling? What got you started?
Well, I guess I was always interested in distilling from, because I did agricultural science many years ago.
Yeah.
And did microbiology, physics and chemistry and all those things. And just distilling always intrigued me, but I never ever did any.
Yeah.
And about 6 years ago, I got a job restoring an old water mill at Nant, what is now Nant Distillery. I had to fix up all the old cogs, the water wheel and the millstones to grind the grist for the distillery. That got me interested. I was actually offered a job as distiller there, but decided no, I didn't want to work for anybody else. I liked working for myself. Then, it was only about 4 years ago, I had a certain sort of rye corn that I'd grown on my farm. And I thought, what am I going to do with all this? It's not an easy marketable product. If I know what I'll do, I'll build a distillery, my own distillery.
So,
into whiskey.
The rye corn itself is actually on your property, you're growing it yourself?
Yes, I've been growing rye corn for over 40 years. And I guess even the story of the rye corn itself is a little interesting one. When I was fresh out of uni, the local agriculture department had a little brown paper bag full of a new variety of rye corn, which was a much higher yielding than the old variety that my father used to grow. So I got this little bag of it and scattered the seeds in the garden. When 6 months later, I harvested it by hand, thrashed it all by hand, like the third world countries do. Then spread it again by hand out in the paddock. This time, when it grew again the next year, I borrowed a tiny little harvester to harvest the grain. And then from then I had enough to sow with our normal farm equipment. And since then, I've probably sown thousands of acres with what started out just that little bag of rye corn.
Wow.
And now that is what I'm using for the distillery. Obviously, I didn't start out with that in mind. The really distillery story just started seriously about 4 years ago.
Wow, that's fantastic. So everything's kind of grown on your property, you're distilling it on your property. Talking about the still, it's really special. You made it yourself.
Yes.
I love the story behind it. So what happened there?
Yeah, I needed to distill. I priced one from the local still maker way out of my budget, and so I thought, I was pretty handy making things. I made things for years and years in the workshop, farm machinery, altered things, built things, invented things. So I got a lesson from one of my son's friends who's a boiler maker. On how to weld copper. Bought a tiny little TIG welder. Bought some new copper. This time I had to buy new copper because you really shouldn't be using recycled copper to build a still with. Then I had to buy some special welding rods.
Yeah.
I was really keen to get going, so I thought I want to get practicing on this TIG welding because it's a little bit difficult. So I had some old power lines that had fallen down that I'd scrounged up for using as tyre wire and things, and I cleaned up with this copper wire and just practicing welding with that on bits of the steel that you couldn't see. Eventually the proper rods turned up and I had a go with them and they were hopeless. I just could not weld with them at all, so they're still sitting in the workshop there, and these old power cables are much better, and you get a lovely finish and the same colour as the copper and everything, so they're beautiful.
So everything's farmed on site, the welding rods have it recycled, you built it yourself. I just love this. It's sort of like really, almost like MacGyver. You've kind of managed to build something that everyone looks at as being this kind of like romantic. You're a distiller, loads of money has to be behind it. You're just making it all yourself. It's so encouraging.
The bricks of the fireplace that the pot still sits on, that was an old shop right near my house that burnt down many years ago. And I said to them, do you want me to get rid of the bricks for you? Thinking, well, one day I'll have a use for those bricks. Yep. So we carted them all away and dumped them on the farm, and the kids built cubby houses out of them when they were young. And anyway, there were some lovely bricks there to build for a fireplace for the pot still to sit on. And then the pot still itself is heated by direct flame.
Yep.
The fuel for it, I was making biodiesel for quite a few years to run the farm tractors and the vehicles on. So I got some old diesel burners and modified them very slightly, and was running them on biodiesel to run the still with. And then I very quickly realised I was spending a lot of time making biodiesel and not often enough in this distillery. So I just modified the burners a little bit more. In fact, had a couple of little old toaster ovens, and I got the elements out of them, and welded them up and made them. They now heat up the oil that comes into the burners. So the burners now run on straight cooking oil, waste cooking oil.
Waste cooking oil, so recycled stuff from your local fish and chip.
The local fish and chip shop is right next to the farm. So I just linked down the road, 1 kilometre down the road, pick up a 200 litre drum of cooking oil now and again, bring it home, just pour it through a sock filter and into the burner it goes, into the still.
I don't think there's another spirit or even alcohol on the planet that can claim that it's grown on one farm, that distilled through a distillery that a guy built himself, partially recycled stuff, and it's fired on fish and chip oil from the shop next door. Like, this is just, it's so incredibly cool. And the best bit about it is you didn't set out planning to do it that way, did you? It was just
I didn't plan out to go green. I tried to do it as cheap as I could.
Yeah.
And after a while, actually, was whiskey writer Dominic Rosgrove came to visit me, and he said, "You've got the only biodiesel powered still in the world." And that got me thinking, gee, how green am I? then I realised that, well, farmers want to be green anyway. That's what you try to do all the time. But then I started going through everything I was doing, and I realised, gee, this really is green. I'm not hooked onto a municipal water scheme. Just collect all my own water, the rainwater mostly that I use in the distilling process. I use a little bit of river water for cooling water, but that's just recycled. It goes into a big tank round and round. And there's no chemicals and things added to the water. It's just rainwater.
That's amazing.
And then when the waste from the mashing, it's the crushed up grain, once we've extracted the sugar from it, I feed that out to the sheep on the farm, and they basically pelletise it, turn it into fertiliser and scatter it over the farm for me.
See, that's perfect. Everything seems to just be kind of coming together in this one beautiful space. Now, the spirit, this is not something that tastes like it's done on the cheap, believe me. This is one of the most unique spirits in the world, and for Ryan, you make probably the most full-bodied and amazing. In terms of the flavour profile, mouthfeel, all that, it is just astonishing. We'll do a tasting video in a little while for you as well, but it is definitely not something that tastes like it's come from, used fish and chip oil and a recycled copper still. That's for sure. Did you set out to do something that sort of high quality, or was it just, let's distill and see how good I can get it?
I just said, let's distill and see how good what comes out, and I just struck it lucky.
You
I
definitely
haven't changed anything since I started. I know one thing that I did set out on purpose to do was to not make a vodka. Vodka's got basically all the flavour stripped out of it, so it's just, well, I shouldn't be rude and call it motor fuel, but anyway, it's got no flavour. It's got no flavour. I want to go the opposite. I want as much flavour in as I can, and rye's got a lot of flavour as well. So I thought, well, if I can get as much flavour as I can in, I can actually, we won't have that new makey sort of flavour like a lot of other spirits have, because there's so much flavour in it that it just, we just don't have that new makey flavour.
Absolutely. Yep. No, you certainly did strike it lucky, and I think we'll even possibly get Priscilla, the current sort of Victorian rep for Belgrove, to come on in and join us for a bit of a tasting video in a second. So that's, Peter, that's the story behind it. It's astonishing that Australia's producing something this amazing, and that it has just been done with nothing more than a desire to try something new, find a new way of using a product, and coming up with something that is truly, truly the best unique rye, and soon to be the best aged rye whiskey in the world.